We have by far the safest food supply in the entire world.
The safest food supply in the world.
Let's remember one thing. We have the safest food supply in the world right here in the U.S.
It's laughable. We don't have the safest food system in the world.
Cut fruit, cut cantaloupe, strawberries, caramel apples, tomatoes, onions, chicken. All these products are likely contaminated.
It is a very scary situation where you have a perfectly healthy 17-year-old female. 48 hours later, she's dying.
It was an absolute nightmare. It was definitely from E. coli.
If I buy chicken at the grocery store, should I assume it's safe for me?
Your primary assumption should be that it contains pathogens such as Salmonella and Campylobacter.
There are 15 federal agencies that in one form or another are tasked with food safety regulation.
Food companies hate regulation.
They don't think of it as food. It becomes a commodity.
Profit is more important than ethics.
Consumers would really be shocked at some of the stories that we could tell them.
Right now, the government is not doing enough to protect consumers.
Regulators have the ability to set the tone that encourages industry to do the right thing.
If the public makes their voices heard, legislators will act.
I bet we all didn't know this, right? We knew it was coming. I've been writing a book, but I can't let this go any longer. I think the best way to do it is through video so that you guys can understand it a little more and prevent this and save your children from a catastrophe. If you haven't noticed that families are experiencing health issues at an alarming rate, cancers that can't be cured, illnesses, these things are not just a coincidence. They're happening more than they ever should have. So I think it's important to understand that our food, water, medications, all of it has been contaminated, and one of the worst things was PFAS. So they knew those things were contaminated, and they knew that it would contaminate the earth, and they did it anyways. Let's move on to the next. Leave me a comment below and let me know what you guys think.
Chemicals and toxic components have been found in toys and canned food in a number of U.S. discount stores that you might well shop at. They're very common. Stores like Dollar Tree and Five Below. We'll get to that. Let's show you some of the products that were found to have these harmful chemicals. You have Minnie Mouse kid-safe headphones. Uh-oh, Disney trying to corrupt our youth, as they say. Anyway, you've got shredded white chicken, Pop Weaver extra butter popcorn. Oh God, I love microwave popcorn. I'm gonna have to look into this. But there's a very good chance that you've shopped at one of these stores. Dollar Tree, Family Dollar, 99-cent only stores, Five Below, Dollar General. I know that these are common in LA. They're pretty common around the country. And what this is about is that researchers looked into hundreds of different products and tried to find what potentially harmful chemicals they might have in them. So they looked at 5 different retailers. They looked for things like lead, byproducts of plastic, phthalates, which we've talked about on the show before. They found them in 120 of 226 products. That is more than half had at least one chemical of concern, as it's called. That includes baby toys, the aforementioned Disney-themed headphones. They found lead and things that theoretically can contribute to higher levels of cancer, specifically in childhood. Products like fake teeth had PVCs in it, endocrine disrupting chemicals, things that can harm reproductive and cognitive development. And all of these, of course, are not good to consume or touch at any point in your life, but particularly for kids. These are common, cheap products that many people might be consuming. Morgan, what do you think about this?
Yeah, and a lot of these companies enter markets and then push out some smaller grocery stores that might be available or independently owned grocery stores, and then they become a monopolist of the area. And then what do monopolists do? Well, they prey on their customers and their competitors. And this is an example of that. I mean, putting people, and these are usually in areas with folks earning lower incomes, less healthy products, dangerous chemical products. I mean, yeah, it's this is why we need to have stronger enforcement of our antitrust laws and increase competition so that we can push these.
See, like I said, you got to push these people out of the market, and so we got to lobby together to stop this. Like, what? I mean, I don't know what Americans shouldn't be appalled, because even upper class people, not just the poor, but it is targeting low-income people, because look at what Campbell's Soup did. This is so disgusting. Greedy people, this is why greedy and money shouldn't exist. And when you realize that you should never have to go and eat something that we don't know what we're putting in our body, and regardless of that, it shouldn't even be allowed in human body. Over 1,000 ingredients, that's crazy to me.
We sat here and ate beef 3, 4, 5 days a week for, as far as I'm concerned, over a decade of contaminated beef. How much is in my system? How much is in my kids' system? Is it going to kill them in the, before they get a life? It's hard to say.
There's something poisoning America's farms. A chemical that was built in a lab decades ago by companies who knew in private that it was highly toxic. Now that chemical is showing up almost everywhere.
It is a Pandora's box. It's going to blow up, and people are going to find out it's in it and everything, and it's in everyone, and there's nothing to clean it up, and there's nothing to save you from it.
Toxic PFAS, also known as
forever chemicals.
PFAS are in so many consumer products. Non-stick pans,
dental floss, computer chips,
shampoos, and conditioners.
Whether it's gone down the river and contaminated fresh drinking water for people, or if it's on farmland and you're eating it, it's out there.
We have a mass poisoning of our population.
Forever chemicals are linked to a number of serious health issues.
How can a company knowingly have contaminated the groundwater?
So, how did we get here? How did our farms become toxic waste sites? How did the Teflon in your nonstick pan become a full-blown public health crisis? And why has it taken so long for the government to take action?
They knew about the problem for decades.
And now they've got a chemical that can't be destroyed, it can't be cleaned up. If we don't get some real response real soon, we're all gonna be in a real hell of a shit show mess.
Can you talk about how you guys name the cattle?
It's just it's a family thing. My kids name them, my wife names them, and it's better than numbers.
Jason Grostick is a third-generation cattle farmer from Brighton, Michigan.
We started back in the early 1900s. Back then it was a dairy farm. My dad took over things in the 70s. We lost him to a farming accident in 95, and then in 97 we decided to get out of the dairy and get into beef. There you go.
I couldn't imagine having my farm taken over some PFAS, something you didn't even cause. But the problem is all of us that can't afford high-end things, which is most of us, end up in the situation where we're not knowing what we're consuming until it's too late. And who knows what damage that caused him and his family.
Have fun. That business was booming. We were growing steadily every year. We had plans of our kids taking over and doing it. 3 generations, could have been 4. But as we look at it now with PFAS shutting us down in 2022, there's no growth here. There's no more family farming.
A few years ago, Jason got a call that he wasn't expecting from the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development.
January 27th of 2022, got on a Zoom meeting with 4 people I'd never seen in my life. The head of MDARD, he starts apologizing, all sympathetic and this, that, and the other thing. And I finally said, what the hell are you talking about? You don't know? And I says, no, what? He says, well, we're serving you a seizure notice today. You're shut down. Nothing leaves the farm.
Without warning, the state of Michigan had shut down Jason's farm, declaring it contaminated and unusable. They cited high levels of so-called PFAS on the land.
This is the bucket of tags of all the animals we lost Either they died because of it, or we dispatched them to save them their own pain and misery. It's been tough on my wife and kids. I was just a miserable bastard for 2 years, and they got the brunt of that shit show. I mean, they took away my livelihood. They basically banked.
See, and if the state took your property, I feel like they should be buying you out. If anything, I think that it sounds so off that they just take your dairy farm and say it's contaminated, leave everything here and move on with yourself with no reimbursement, nothing. It's not their fault. They shouldn't be held liable. The people that did it should be. Anywhere where there's problems, we keep hearing the word cheap. All things cheap should be looked into. High quality stuff doesn't have cheap chemicals that are going to harm us. What are they doing to the poor? I'm curious to know if they dumped a bunch of soil on top of the PFAS. I know that it's there forever, but if it's buried and you don't go below that, I'm sure it could stay on the surface. I'm not sure. What do you guys think? Leave a comment below.
Me. They told me I'd be back in business in no time. Here I am, 3 years and a few months into it, and I don't have rights to farm. The government took all that away from me over something I didn't do. I didn't dump the chemical here.
Jason's farm was poisoned by PFAS chemicals that were buried within a type of fertilizer called biosolids. Every time you flush your toilet or do a load of laundry, that water goes to a wastewater treatment plant. And biosolids are the leftover byproduct of that process. For decades, the EPA has encouraged the use of biosolids as a cheap fertilizer.
I'm not the only one that took biosolids. The EPA said it's clean, the state of Michigan said it was clean, and I'm on a small scale. Some of these farms are creating tens of thousands of gallons of milk a day. How many homeowners is that hitting?
It's estimated that as many as 20 million acres of farmland across.
Now, put this in perspective. 20 million acres has been contaminated with PFAS. Now, when you consider there is, what did I see? It was like 23 point something billion acres here in the United States. And when you subtract the two, it gets down to 2.82 billion. Don't quote me if I'm wrong. If I'm right, I don't know. Yeah, it's close. I could be right on point. Okay. That's crazy to think of the mass scale of that.
The country could be contaminated with forever chemicals.
There's PFAS in West Virginia, New Mexico, Arizona, Wisconsin. I mean, it's showing its face everywhere.
So how did this happen? How did forever chemicals end up in our waste? And who put the poison there in the first place?
Something wrong with this cow, and they keep trying to tell me there's nothing wrong with these things. I can call the West Virginia State Veterinarian, Doc Thomas, and the only thing he asked me is, do you have a good attorney?
You know, and when Mr. Tennant first reached out to me and was concerned about his cattle, we thought, you know, this is going to be a fairly straightforward, quick, easy case. We had no idea that we would be dealing with PFAS or any of these completely unregulated man-made chemicals.
Rob Bilott started out as a corporate lawyer who specialized in defending large chemical companies from environmental lawsuits. But in 1998, he was approached by a farmer from Parkersburg, West Virginia, a man named Wilbur Tennant.
And this is what they expect a man's cows to drink on his own property.
Wilbur's cows had been acting deranged and dying off at an alarming rate.
There was a serious problem occurring on that property. There was something coming out of this landfill next to his property.
That landfill belonged to the largest employer in town, the chemical giant DuPont.
It took some battling in court to finally get DuPont ordered to start turning over their internal files. What I began to see there really kind of changed my entire perception of what I thought I knew about environmental law in the United States.
Those documents, 110,000 pages in total, contain private letters, health reports, and scientific studies. And Rob kept finding mention of one chemical in particular.
PFOA, perfluorooctanoic.
Does that surprise you that they found the research? They knew about the risk. They knew it. This is what I'm fighting so hard about, even with our medications and health and our food. I'm fighting so hard because we've all been lied to. But the only way this changes, guys, is if we all band together to make a change. It's crazy how money can buy your way out of trouble. Like, you see these lawsuits where they're in complete wrong, and because the other person can't afford to fight back, corporation wins. Same thing with the Epstein files.
One chemical in particular.
PFOA, perfluorooctanoic acid. We were dealing with a chemical that had been invented by the 3M company right around really the time of World War II. It was DuPont that was around the same time had invented its own new chemical called Teflon.
Food doesn't stick to Teflon like it does to other things.
Teflon was famous for its non-stick, waterproof properties. But to make Teflon at scale, DuPont needed the chemical that 3M was producing. So they started buying it in huge quantities, shipping it to what would become the largest Teflon plant in the world, right outside of Parkersburg.
They were concerned, though, by this unique chemical structure of PFOA, this 8 carbons attached to fluorine. The DuPont scientists realized that was a very strong chemical bond, something that probably wouldn't be able to be broken apart. The concern became at that point, well, what would happen to living things that might get exposed to this?
So by the early 60s, DuPont started running its own experiments on rats, rabbits, and eventually their own workers. And they kept finding a concerning pattern.
There was a wealth of information within both 3M and DuPont that this particular chemical was toxic, persistent, cancer-causing. Yet all of this information was essentially kept internal to the companies. And this information had been covered up. The public hadn't been told, the regulators hadn't been told, the scientific community hadn't been told.
Armed with all of this evidence, Rob was able to settle Wilbur Tennant's case in 2001. But by that point, he had already opened Pandora's box.
What we had seen in the internal DuPont documents was that the same chemical was also getting into the public drinking water of the entire surrounding community, about 70,000 people in that area. So we had filed a new lawsuit against DuPont, this time a class action on behalf of the entire community.
That lawsuit eventually yielded a settlement of $70 million. But DuPont still refused to acknowledge that their chemicals could have played any role in causing widespread health issues in Parkersburg. So the settlement was used to do something unique. The money went towards developing a massive health study conducted by an independent panel of scientists.
We got 69,000 people out of the 70,000 in that community who came forward and participated. Probably some of the biggest human health studies ever done on any chemical. And by 2013, they had confirmed that drinking PFOA in the water was linked with 6 different diseases: kidney cancer, testicular cancer, ulcerative colitis, thyroid disease, preeclampsia, and high cholesterol.
Today, there are dozens of companies that produce these chemicals, with more than 10,000 varieties of PFAS on the market. They can be found in the tap water of nearly half the country, in sewage sludge that's spread across our farms, and in the blood of more than 99% of Americans.
It's enough to make anybody want to throw their hands in the air and just walk away from it. You can't because it has real life, tangible health consequences.
Cindy Boyle lives with her husband on the outskirts of Marinette, Wisconsin. For years, without knowing it, they were drinking water that had been poisoned.
Tyco Johnson Controls, they manufacture AFFF firefighting foam, not very far from our home, and they open ground tested this firefighting foam for decades. looking back at that, you know, we just had a small family of 4, and my mom had kidney cancer as a young woman. My sister has thyroid disease. I have a full thyroidectomy. My dad had a brain tumor. He's got, you know, prostate cancer, all kinds of health issues.
When she tested her blood, Cindy found that her PFAS levels were 5 times higher than the national average.
It really lit a fire under me that we unknowingly fed this to our children in their bottles. One night I was sitting in a parking lot on the phone with my sister. Sorry, it was very late, and I was venting to her, saying, what do I do? And she just called it like it was, and she said, you're either gonna fight this yourself with whoever will help, or you're gonna leave this for your kids to deal with. And it sounds so trite, but that was the truth. And I hung up, and that's been the path ever since. We've met with all kinds of different people on this, and my plea has been, please legislate this. Because once you legislate it, now you must test for it. In many cases, when you test, you find. When you find, you must report. When you report to people that they've been drinking poison, a lot of them react the same way we are. They don't like it.
In states across the country, activists like Cindy have successfully fought to hold corporations accountable and to protect their communities from forever chemicals. But that progress is only a patchwork. Many states have no guardrails at all, and even the states with stronger protections are still leaving people behind.
With biosolids being applied to the soil the way they were, how am I the only one in the state of Michigan that's not allowed to farm? I don't know if there's a governor or a president that technically cares about the public, and they sure as hell don't care about one farmer in the state of Michigan.
It raises an important question.
Why have we not made more progress than one would expect?
I think there are a lot of factors as to why so little progress has been made on this issue. One of them is that industry in this country is extremely powerful.
Kyla Bennett worked at the EPA for 10 years. Now she's helping farmers in Texas who are suing the EPA for failing to protect them from PFAS.
EPA was told by PFAS manufacturers in 1998 that there were probably dangers associated with these chemicals. And here we are decades later, and very little progress has been made on keeping people safe from these chemicals.
In the last 2 decades, hundreds of new PFAS compounds have been allowed to flood the market, and contamination from those chemicals has only continued to grow. Meanwhile, industry groups have spent tens of millions of dollars lobbying to block any PFAS legislation from making its way through Congress.
Industry lobbyists shape our laws. They have infiltrated Congress and our federal agencies like EPA.
But even with the outsized power of those corporate interests, progress was still possible.
Enough is enough. It's time that we prioritize the American people's health over profits of big polluters.
In April of 2024, Biden's EPA established the first ever federal limit on forever chemicals in drinking water. It was estimated that the new limits would reduce exposure for 100 million people nationwide.
And then, of course, there's the ever-changing political landscape, and that is more like this.
Under Trump, everything is up in the air.
The administrator, Lee Zeldin, when he was a representative, he seemed very concerned about PFAS.
When I was in the House, I was a member of the PFAS task force.
And in May, Lee Zeldin even released a PFAS action plan.
And if you read it quickly, it sounds like they want to take action, but if you read it carefully, you can see that they are actually going to be deregulating.
Later that month, the Trump administration announced they would be eliminating many of the Biden-era limits on PFAS in drinking water, citing the need for, quote, common sense flexibility. When you look at who's running the EPA, this approach starts to make a lot more sense.
Trump has appointed several people with a lot of industry experience and background into EPA.
So if you'd raise your right hand.
There's David Fatuhi, deputy administrator of the EPA, who once represented a company that had been accused of spreading 93,000 tons of PFAS-containing biosolids throughout Maine. Then there's Nancy Beck, who Trump nominated to be the head of the Consumer Product Safety Commission. She used to be a lobbyist for the American Chemistry Council, where she led the industry's charge against drinking water limits for PFAS. And then there's Lynn Dekleva, who holds a senior role in the EPA. Before that, she worked for decades at none other than DuPont.
It's been really painful to see how decision-making can be influenced. There is a lot of profit around the use of these compounds. Consequently, there is a lot of effective interests. I keep coming back to the only solution, which is ultimately really, you need to cut the head off the snake.
Industry is arguing that basically all of the uses are essential, that you need it in your waterproof mascara or in your baseball glove, that these things are so essential to the functioning of society that if we get rid of them, society is just going to fall apart. And that's bullshit.
It's just a vicious, vicious cycle that you'll never get ahead of as long as these compounds are being used and certainly put out into the environment.
We're talking about an issue that has continued for decades in this country. It has transcended political parties, administrations.
The federal government needs to have a comprehensive, single definition of PFAS. They need to regulate all of those PFAS as a class, and they need to ban all non-essential uses of PFAS. And unless and until that's done, we're not going to be able to get a handle on this.
It makes you feel less alone knowing there's other people out there. Does it make you feel better? Hell no. Because now you just know there's another person out there, the misery to live with that I've lived with. As the American people, we got to band together to get the PFAS cleaned up. It takes a lot of people to move the mountain, and PFAS is a mountain.
And you know, I've known about DuPont for a while, but to me, I just think it's crazy how we've let this company and other companies get away with it, and they're still making products even after they knew the risk, even after they were sued, even after they went through this and went through that. They knew the risk, and they knew what it was doing to humans, and to put it in such cheap products that we give to children. There should be an absolute ban on that, and I know that some might feel differently, but I know that they're still allowing over 800 chemicals in our food. Something is very off, and we should be definitely being private investigators, growing our own food, and not allowing this no more.
Everything is poison. Water addition. Have you ever wondered why there are expiration dates on water bottles? It is because the bottles are made with petrochemicals made from crude oil. As time goes by, those petrochemicals begin to leach into the water. But even without contamination from petrochemicals, people often are blind to the fact that most bottled water is just tap water. And tap water happens to be poison. Have you ever stopped to think about where that water originally comes from? It is recycled. But recycled from where? That's right. Now, while wastewater treatment facilities do a great job of filtering out human waste, tap water still contains pharmaceutical drugs and hormone regulators. Our tap water can legally contain nearly 3,000 nanograms of atrazine per liter, a poison heavily used in agriculture. To put it into perspective, it only takes 300 nanograms to turn a male frog female. What is more concerning is that a known neurotoxin, fluoride, is purposely added to tap water. Yet, it is so toxic that warning labels on toothpaste advises you to call poison control if swallowed. What about distilled water? Well, water distillation can remove nearly all impurities from water, including fluoride, but distilled water is also devoid of all the healthy things like minerals or electrolytes. In fact, when consumed, this water will actually absorb minerals away from your body. As it turns out, nature always has the best solution. The best drinking water comes from natural springs. The website, findaspring.com, will help you locate a spring near you.
This gives me Warzone vibes. Just saying.
You can't see them or taste them, but there are more than 12,000 chemicals that could be lurking in your drinking water, causing everything from birth defects to cancer.
I think people need to understand that all these chemicals will persist in our environment essentially forever.
These chemicals are broadly known as PFAS, dangerous man-made toxins that never go away, found in everything from baby clothes and dog food packaging to nonstick cookware and dental floss. Currently, much attention is focused on drinking water, as communities around the country are learning these hazardous chemicals can seep into their water supplies from industry discharge, landfills, airports, and military bases. So we decided to test what's coming out of taps, from suburban homes and city businesses to the halls of government. Bottle after bottle, we collected samples at 11 locations in Maryland, Virginia, and in Washington, D.C., including at the U.S. Capitol and the EPA, the very places critical decisions will be made about these chemicals. In nearly every case, including at the U.S. Capitol and the EPA, tests were positive for a type of PFAS known as PFHxA. That is unregulated in the U.S., but on the verge of being severely restricted in the European Union because of its harmful effects on the reproductive system. More than a third of our samples contained PFOA, universally viewed as one of the most serious PFAS chemicals. And in 2 of our tests in suburban Virginia homes, the levels of PFOA were more than 1,200 times higher than what the EPA is proposing as safe. We took what we found to Dr. Linda Birnbaum, the former director of the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences and one of the country's leading experts on PFAS. What's disturbing to you about the test results?
That they're everywhere, that you're seeing these chemicals essentially everywhere. So the levels are low, which is the good news, but they're still there.
One of the chemicals we detected that she was perhaps most concerned about is called PFHxS. We found it in the tap water of 2 Maryland homes.
And that one really concerns me because there are growing amounts of animal and human data showing that PFHxS may be every bit as bad as, say, PFOS and PFOA, and it lasts in our bodies for a longer period of time.
All PFAS accumulate in our bodies. The EPA says PFAS chemicals can affect the development of babies, impact the liver, kidneys, and immune system, and have been associated with certain cancers. This summer, the EPA proposed reducing the acceptable level of one of the most prevalent PFAS chemicals by more than 99.99%.
The water that I was drinking, that I thought was clean, was toxic and full of these chemicals.
For years, marathoner Beth Marcassino drank huge amounts of her tap water.
I ran with a Camelback, which is like a backpack and has a large quantity of water.
Did it ever occur to you that that water might be contaminated?
Never. Not in a million years. Ever.
Until her son Samuel died shortly after birth, failing to develop a kidney or bladder, problems that some studies have linked to PFAS exposure, and Beth believes may be linked to the death of her son.
Here I am today. I should have never have ever questioned that my water was the source that killed my son.
She believes his death can be traced to massive quantities of PFAS chemicals that were dumped for 3 decades into the river that supplies drinking water to more than 300,000 Wilmington, North Carolina residents. But Wilmington isn't alone. By some estimates, 200 million Americans nationwide are likely drinking water polluted with these chemicals.
We predicted that in the U.S., there's over 53,000 sites that have contamination. In fact, we think that's a very conservative number, and it's probably many more.
In a first-of-its-kind study, Dr. Birnbaum and colleagues mapped probable communities with high concentrations of PFAS chemicals. No state was spared, and some regions were blanketed. How many people would you estimate in America have measurable exposure to PFAS?
I think almost everybody.
Whether you have PFAS in your tap water depends on where you live. Most states have not adopted limits. leaving the most likely regulation to come from the EPA, which told us it hopes to have a national regulation with enforceable PFAS limits in place by the end of next year. Wilmington, North Carolina, is now successfully reducing PFAS in the water, but it took 5 years and taxpayers footing the bill for a hard-fought $43 million water treatment plant upgrade.
I hope that nobody else in America has to endure the same loss that I do. But I believe that with enough fight and enough effort, we can stop these chemicals from being produced. That's what I'm going to do, because my daughter and other families deserve this.
Our team wanted to take this one step further, so we tested nearly 24 top brands of bottled water from across the country. The good news? Every sample we took came back with no detectable levels of PFAS. For Spotlight on America, I'm Lisa Fletcher.
This makes you start thinking, doesn't it? Like, rest in peace to her baby. And I don't get it. Like, I know this has to do, I know it does. I mean, my research comes back to PFAS all the time. PFAS contribute to a lot of things. Inflammation, it can cause problems within the GI tract throughout your entire body, cancer, all kinds of stuff. But yeah, none of this can be good.
Hey, it's old Johnny Knuckles. My wife said her dang Walmart water tasted funny. I done looked what's in there. Calcium chloride. Guess who puts out calcium chloride? Pfizer. Look what it's for. Now, if you look down at the bottom right, it says like de-icer for your car and something else. This ain't for drinking. Why is Pfizer messing with drinking water? Hey, man, this stuff's going back to the store. They're trying to kill us. That's crazy. What's Pfizer? No, we're out of here. Y'all be safe. Hey, stay educated.
Now we have to be worried about our water and calcium chloride. Wow. Again, it's another generic item. I want to bring that to your attention because most of this stuff is cheap junk, or it's stuff that, like water, how did they get away with this, guys, for so long? Without oversight, without somebody or multiple people just coming forward, just saying, hey, no more. Not just labeling, but no more.
So let's talk atrazine. This has been going on for at least 20 years, but atrazine has been put into our drinking water. It's an herbicide, but it will affect your sexual characteristics. There's a study, a great study on frogs, which showed 10% of frogs who are given atrazine, and by the way, it's about 1/3 of the amount that's actually in your drinking water. Decreased penis size, decreased testosterone production, significant, and 10% of the frogs that were tested, not only did they have decreased external genitalia, but 10% of the frogs that were tested actually became functional females, to the point where they were having sex with male frogs at that point and producing viable eggs. So completely changing genders altogether. What do you guys think out there would be some of the common things that would happen in our society now that atrazine could cause? If we know for sure 100% they are putting it in our drinking water at 3 times the amount that was studied on these frogs, and testosterone was dropping, penile size was shrinking, the amount of testosterone wasn't even that of a male, and then frogs started having sex with other male frogs, but those male frogs actually now produce eggs, and they're becoming completely functional females. What kind of effects would that have on our society? Give me some comments and let me know. Thanks.
This has me thinking. Atrazine. Okay, birth control causes all this stuff. Birth control also causes you to swell, but atrazine is causing similar symptoms. Wow. What is it doing in our drinking water? I don't get that, right? Why are they doing this to our drinking water?
America, we could potentially have a massive problem. The EPA has just issued a drinking water warning to millions of customers. So the Environmental Protection Agency has issued a critical warning about widespread cybersecurity vulnerabilities in the nation's drinking water systems, which could affect millions of Americans. On November 13th, the EPA's Office of Inspector General published a report that assessed 1,062 public drinking water systems, which serve about 193 million people. Now, this report identified 97 systems supplying water to 26.6 million customers with critical or high-risk cybersecurity vulnerabilities. An additional 211 systems serving 82.7 million people were found to have medium to low-risk vulnerabilities. Either way, not good. So the agency has long-standing concerns with cybersecurity-related threats and vulnerabilities facing the water sector. Now, the assessment analyzed more than 75,000 IP addresses and 14,400 web domains, focusing on systems serving populations of 50,000 or more. The vulnerabilities stem from inadequate risk assessments and poor security practices. The report said issues include failure to change default passwords, use of single logins for all staff, and not removing access for former employees. So this is a little unsettling. The report highlighted the potential economic fallout of a cyber-induced water service disruption. A one-day nationwide disruption could jeopardize $43.5 billion in economic activity. For instance, in a single day, if California's water supply was affected, they would result in $61 billion in revenue losses, while a disruption in North Carolina's Charlotte water could amount to losses of $132 million per day. Now, the crazy thing is the EPA doesn't have its own cybersecurity incident reporting system that water and wastewater systems could use to notify the EPA of cybersecurity incidents. Why not? So they solely rely on the three-letter organizations. America, we got a lot going on in the world, and this is not out of the question. So like they said, just be prepared, because at this point, anything.
They're using human fetal cells from aborted babies as a flavor enhancement in our food supply.
Pepsi was busted for doing that. Pepsi was using that as a flavor enhancer in their cola.
Yeah, PepsiCo is certainly one of them, but the list is very long, and it's important for everybody to download the flyer that we have on StopTheCrime.net so you don't consume this aborted fetal tissue. What does it do? Well, it incites anger, and it literally rewires our brain as we cannibalize ourselves. The same thing, of course, which happened with mad cow disease when they were grinding up roadkill and other cattle and feeding it to the cattle. We're being fed our own species, and we must know the products that are certainly implementing this. So I'm going to just read some of this to you now, but again, I caution you when you type in the list of companies using fetal cells from aborted babies, which you can do. Again, the list of companies using fetal cells from aborted babies. You're going to see a very disturbing photograph. But Cinemix is listed on its website, and its partners decided to ignore the letter from the Right to Life group that was certainly organizing against the use of humans in the food supply. And sadly, the Right for Life group lost their bid to stop this during the Obama administration. Now remember, it doesn't matter who's president. Anyone could have been president at that time. We're a corporate structure. We're run by the corporation, and certainly PepsiCo is a massive...
This is what food looks like now. Not meat, not vegetables, not grain. Stabilizers, emulsifiers, preservatives, flavor systems. You wouldn't use these at home, but this is what you eat. Shelf life matters more than nutrition. Texture matters more than taste. Production matters more than health. This is considered normal food. Most people never noticed when food...
Everyone thinks the fake meat experiment failed. It didn't. They just changed strategy. They realize they can't make Americans choose lab food by choice, so they're doing something much darker. They're poisoning everything you can afford. Look at the cheap protein. Nuggets, burger blends, fast food patties, cafeteria meals. It's not meat anymore. It's soy paste, pea protein, seed oils, fillers. Mix just enough with protein so that your body doesn't fight it. That's how you rewire a population, not with propaganda, with addiction. You'll never buy a cricket burger on the shelf, but your kid will eat nuggets with insect protein buried in the breading because you didn't know it was there. You won't buy Impossible beef, but you'll buy cheap ground blend that's 40% lab protein because your grocery bill is bleeding you dry. They don't need to ban real food. They just have to price you out of it. This isn't about climate. This is psychological warfare. They're training America away from real food, one filler at a time. That's why we built the American Rancher Alliance. Real ranchers, real cattle, real beef. We are putting American beef back into American grocery stores at prices normal families can actually afford. Not farm-to-table boutiques, not $25 a pound steaks online, not restaurant hype. Grocery stores, every town, USA. Decentralizing the supply chain is the only way to beat them. Get the beef away from the middlemen and give the price power back to the people who raise it and the families who eat it. If you want American meat in American stores again, this is the movement. There is no plan B.
McDonald's cheeseburger. Still warm. Just tempted to eat it. Okay, so we're going to leave our burger to digest for a while in the acid. Come back later and see what's happened.
Hydrochloric acid is found in everybody's stomach.
3.5 hours. So we're going to see what happens to a tasty McDonald's cheeseburger after 3.5 hours of concentrated hydrochloric acid. Oh my God. I think it's absolutely disgusting. So, I mean, the fats aren't really going to dissolve very well because in your stomach there's lots of bile acids happening in your actual body to do digestion.
Professional doctor doing his job who took the publications in the Lancet, in the New England Journal of Medicine, as gospel truth, biblical gospel truth, never questioned it. And now, I look to people like John Ioannidis, who you may be familiar with. So he's a professor of medicine at Stanford. He's the most cited medical researcher in the world. He's considered a medical genius, very high in scientific integrity. And he wrote a paper, 2006, I think it was, in PLOS One, which was entitled Why Most Published Research Findings Are False. And one of the things he writes in there with his own mathematical modeling of the reliability of research, and this is fascinating, he says, the greater the financial interests in a given field, the less likely the research findings are to be true. Wow. A lot of it is because, if you think of the business model of the drug industry, it is to get as many people taking as many.
They call it healthcare, but what if it's actually sickness care? For decades, big pharma and food companies have built a $1 trillion feedback loop. One sells ultra-processed food that fuels chronic illness. The other sells the drugs to treat it. The CDC says 6 in 10 Americans now live with chronic disease. That's not a coincidence, it's an economy. The same lobbyists pushing for deregulated food labeling are also funding pharmaceutical PACs. The same experts shaping nutrition policy are also taking industry money. We're not dying from lack of access. We're dying by design. Because the more we depend on medicine, the more these industries profit. The truth is simple. A healthy population has never been profitable. Culture Uncensored is asking, who do you think benefits from keeping us sick? Like, follow. Leave a comment if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Many people have asked why doctors prescribe so much psychiatric medication if there are so many risks involved. The simple answer is money. Number one, big pharma equals big money. Psych meds are the star revenue producers for the drug companies. In 2011, Big Pharma made over $18 billion in antipsychotics, $11 billion in antidepressants, and nearly $8 billion in ADHD drugs. Number two, research and academia are not actually objective. There are many financial ties between clinical researchers and Big Pharma. A 2021 JAMA study found that in the commentaries they studied, 20% of authors had a disclosed conflict of interest, 31% received payments from trial sponsors, and 96% received payments or research funding that had not been disclosed. There is also publication bias. Papers that are critical of drugs are suppressed and rarely published because journals don't want to jeopardize advertising revenue. Big Pharma also pays newspapers and magazines to run articles. Number 3, the data are not what they seem. Many patients, and sometimes researchers, can tell if they are receiving the drug or the placebo because of side effects. Maintenance trials do not reflect a true placebo because they have withdrawn people from meds. To get FDA approval for a drug, you need 2 studies that show a benefit. However, there are frequently many other studies that show no benefit.
What if I told you that in 2014, an American city poisoned its own people and then lied about it? That's exactly what happened in Flint, Michigan. In April 2014, officials switched Flint's water supply from Detroit's treated system to the polluted Flint River to save money. But the river water was corrosive. Because it wasn't treated, it ate through the city's old pipes, releasing massive amounts of lead into the drinking water. Families turned on their taps and saw brown, foul-smelling water. Kids broke out in rashes, people lost hair, and entire neighborhoods got sick. Still, officials told residents, the water is safe. The truth was horrifying. Tests showed some homes had lead levels more than 13,000 parts per billion. Anything above 5 is dangerous. At least 9,000 children were exposed to lead. Many of them will live with permanent brain damage, learning disabilities, and health problems for the rest of their lives. On top of that, the water triggered a deadly outbreak of Legionnaire's disease. Nearly 90 people were sickened and at least 12 died. Over the next 2 years, studies found that residents in Flint suffered higher rates of anemia, kidney problems, and developmental delays in children. It took relentless protests and national outrage before officials admitted the truth. Flint's residents were forced to rely on bottled water and filters for years, while the state slowly replaced thousands of lead pipes. But even a decade later, the community is still struggling with the long-term health consequences. The Flint water crisis wasn't just an accident. It was environmental racism and government neglect, poisoning a majority black, working-class city to save money. And while the politicians walked away, the people of Flint are left to carry scars that will last a lifetime.
Wow, guys, this is crazy. And what's even more crazy is the baby thing. I just wanted to play it all out, so I'm just shocked, honestly. It doesn't shock me because even in my book I talk about all of this and all of the conspiracies that we allegedly thought that weren't true. They're allegedly true. But the crazy thing is, what makes me mad is all those products in that picture we've all had at least once in our lifetime. And then you wonder why kids are acting strange. Well, it's a combination of poisoning our minds, poisoning our foods, our soils. The only way to take back is that we boycott each and every one of these companies. Don't buy any of their products, make them go out of sale. I urge you guys, I demand everybody come together as a nation. We the people need to stand up, boycott every single one of them. Please go look it up. Look up fetal cells in our food. Please look up those products and boycott them. I might do another video about it, but I wanted to bring this series out because it's important that we find out about what's really happening. Our kids are not being told the truth in school. They're being fed lies. They're being pushed into nonsense political games while they should be sitting at school, not protesting. They should be sitting at school learning. And then we've got institutions, colleges, schools not telling the whole truth. And then we've got our elementary schools transforming little children, middle schools, high schools. Something is off here, so That's when I left the left. I don't want no part of that group. If you're still part of that group, there's something going on within your party, and I'm not saying that you're doing it, but they're misleading us all. The control is crazy. The only way we could take it back is by growing our own food and not putting it into soil that's in the ground, putting it into planters that are not plastic, and putting them into, like, I would say, what would you call it? Like clay vase type things to grow your plants in above ground. We should get more into indoor farming inside, to prevent our soils from polluting our food. These are ways to get PFAS out, get systems that can eliminate it 99.999%. Those are obesogenics, and a lot of us don't talk about that. The scary part is how it's affecting our children. Autistic children, children with weight issues, liver, kidney, heart. This isn't a coincidence. And the more we look into it, the more we find, right? These are not conspiracies. These are facts. Our water, our air, our soil, our food, our people have been polluted. There are people losing their minds. Something around the earth is changing in a dramatic fashion. Why? Because we are in the 6th mass extinction. It's a partial mass extinction. But we're headed for a full mass extinction if things don't change. And that includes people's behavior. When people act crazy, innocent people end up losing lives. And because you have an ideology. An ideology can be dangerous when it's guiding you into protests, fighting, rioting, you know. When you become the guy that was at the White House today at 1:30 this morning, actually at Mar-a-Lago, sorry, and the other 2 guys that got life sentences, we are leading our people down the wrong path. It's time that we speak the truth about our water, our food, our soil. Our bodies are being invaded by medications that prevent pregnancy. And because we take those medications, it alters our bodies and creates something like this, like I have. I'll show you. See my legs? I have big legs. See? There's my leg. That's called lipedema. And then I have a smaller torso, small hands, and then a small wrist, small finger size. See that? Okay, the point is that I have stage 4 lipedema type 5. Alright? This is dangerous. It's because of hormonally treated beef. It's because of antibiotic, hormonally, and steroid treated beef. That is not good for our health. Keeping animals in close quarters without space, not letting them be out in their natural environment is dangerous. We are getting in a world where we have fake food and fake things. They're using fetal cells. And yeah, it did happen during the Obama administration. That's not a coincidence either. But yeah, it could have happened during any of those presidents, because technically all of them were into the same things, allegedly. But yeah, it's no longer a conspiracy. It's time that we as a nation stop taking things for what they are and do our own investigation, whether you're on the left or the right. Make sure you're looking at the real history. Look back. Say, what's the true history beyond that history that we're not being told? You can ask AI these questions. I mean, it's simple. Or you can search in Google, or you can search into textbooks at the